Welcome to the Rational Optimist podcast. $500 billion. That's how much more money we'll be pouring into AI infrastructure investments thanks to the new project Stargate.
So OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, big press conference at the White House the other day. CEO of OpenAI was there, CEO of SoftBank, CEO of Oracle, Larry Ellison, which is one of the 10 richest people in the world, came out. President Trump said they were going to invest up to $500 billion building AI data centers out across America. I think when you dig into the details, it's not going to be quite $500 billion.
Oh, how much is it going to be?
I think it's going to be less than $50 billion. So Gavin Baker, who is the CEO and CIO of Atreides Asset Management, he had a great tweet on this, and he basically broke it down. He said, hey, the $500 billion number, awesome, but if you actually dig into the financials of the companies behind this, of SoftBank, of OpenAI, and of Oracle, they are going to get nowhere near $500 billion. It's going to be more like $50 billion. And look, we're techno-optimists here at the Rational Optimist Society, but I think when something comes out and it's unrealistic, it's important to pour, not cold water, but pour a dose of realism on it.
I think I might be more optimistic than you on this one.
Okay, tell me.
Well, the biggest worry, at least in the investing world, about AI is that we've invested hundreds of billions of dollars into data centers and AI, and there's been no obvious payoff yet. And people are worried that it's a valid worry because, like, the dot-com bubble, that happened during the dot-com bubble, and stocks ultimately crashed. This shows me that we are not slowing down anytime soon. Whether it's 50 billion, whether it's 100 billion, whatever, it's the biggest, richest companies in the world committing to investing a lot more money in AI.
Yeah, well, so a couple of things here. Basically, the Mag 7, Amazon, Apple, Google, Facebook, Oracle is in there, Nvidia, and Tesla. They are going to pour $250 billion this year into building AI data centers.
Aside from Project Stargate.
Right, that's different. And actually, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, had a great quote. Did you see it at Davos? He said, I don't know what OpenAI is going to spend, but I'm good for $80 billion. He literally said that. You're absolutely right that the money is going to be continue to be spent regardless of this. I think it was a nice fancy headline number, but when you look into the companies behind Project Stargate, I'm not sure necessarily it's feasible, but we still know money is pouring in. Although I will say one thing about Stargate, sometimes basically the tail can wag the dog. You could actually see these companies raise this money or take on partners and it become $500 billion over maybe 10 years or 15 years or whatever. Back to your point about there being no payoff, I think one of the biggest qualms I have with Wall Street research that says this from Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and venture capitalist firm Sequoia is they are counting AI revenues completely wrong. Yeah. First of all, I was listening to an Invest Like the Best podcast with Jared Kushner, Patrick O'Shaughnessy was interviewing him, and he said he bought the company that owns many of the Popeyes and McDonald's in Brazil. They used AI and computer vision to cut down food waste by 35%. And I can give you a list of 10 or 20 things examples of companies saving hundreds of millions of dollars using AI or making hundreds of millions of dollars that are not included in these numbers. So I think the payoff is already here, but they're not being included in the numbers. But yeah, big picture, a lot of money's gone into AI.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth with that. So there's no line item in companies' financial statements of here's how much revenue we made from AI, unless you're OpenAI and you actually sell subscriptions to ChatGPT, right? But I mean, just from personal experience, AI saves you money in the person you didn't hire. Like you and I are able to do certain coding exercises. We don't know the first thing about coding. We're able to do certain coding exercises and stock research with that used to take a team of people. Now we have Claude, and with good financial data sources, almost anything's possible. Editing, I mean, you use it more than I do, but I feel like it's turned you and I, not to brag, but we like produce a superhuman amount of research, largely thanks to AI.
I will go so far as to say the Rational Optimist Society would not be possible without the help of AI, specifically Claude.
I agree.
Yeah, and that's maybe it's not a revenue generator, but it's a huge cost saving. And you have like MasterCard came out, oh hey, we can now detect 20% more fraud using AI. Where was that in the numbers? I will say Microsoft and Google and stuff, they have given signals as to regards how much revenue they are generating from their AI products. And that's obviously below what they've invested. But the other thing here is that people look at, oh my God, they're spending all this money. They only generate a tenth of that. Where's the payback? The financial metrics for these companies, like return on invested capital and stuff, that's been going up this whole time. And I, again, won't get into the whole details, but the companies are telling you themselves, hey, we're not going to stop spending the money. We think it's worth it. We're trying to build digital God. So I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. And I think this might even pour more fuel on the fire, even though I don't think it's going to be 500 billion.
Is there any legitimate risk that we overbuild data center capacity?
Yeah, I think there is. But I think that's the same with everything, really. I guess the one thing people always go back to the dot-com bubble, the one big difference this time is that I don't think there's going to be a boom and bust in the same way, because back then Cisco was selling all its equipment to cash burning startups. Whereas now you have the largest, most cash rich, most successful, most kind of clued in companies in the world buying NVIDIA GPUs and other things. I would just look and say, we're clearly not in any stage, we're not near overbuilt yet, because if you look at the kind of data center capacity, hey, how easy is it to get some chips? They're still largely constrained in the world. And I think that's only going to go up as we're still early. Like a tenth of the world, maybe a fifth of the world is using AI yet? That's going to be like half.
I wonder how these things are going to be powered too.
That gets to another one of Trump's actions on day one, right? I think it was 46 or whatever executive actions, along with Stargate, which wasn't necessarily an executive action, but he did sign an executive order invoking emergency powers as part of a plan to unleash the domestic energy production. I think he titled it Unleashing American Energy. This is a huge deal. And this is the other part of the AI puzzle, right?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with the details of this. I know he supports fossil fuel development, which is great. I heard he maybe opposes certain forms of green energy development, which is not great. I mean, we should be going full bore to develop as much energy as we possibly can across the board.
Yeah, for sure. I think solar power and battery rollouts will continue regardless of what Trump does. And just for perspective, we're building last year and the year before, we built more solar power and batteries than we did in basically all of human history combined. But yeah, the big thing here is that the Unleashing American Energy Act, it got out of a lot of the permitting restrictions around fracking and developing critical minerals and nuclear energy resources. Specifically, it kind of scaled back the NEPA law. And if stagnation had a face, if there was one law that you could point to, oh, hey, why is it so hard to get stuff built in America? It's NEPA, which basically slaps this really onerous environmental review on any federal project or any project on federal land. So the average NEPA review, it's now something like 3,000 pages, and it takes 4.5 years to complete. You can imagine developers of energy infrastructure just being on like, it's not worth it. I actually heard the CEO of a leading geothermal company ever say it now takes 7 years on average to drill a geothermal well, which again, like what are we doing here?
It's housing too. This stuff matters big time across the board. Like, so what NEPA actually does, part of what it actually does is it lets private citizens sue developers for, it basically empowers NIMBYs, people who don't want stuff built in their backyard, to sue developers, and it forces the developers to do years and years worth of onerous paperwork. And as a result, a lot of stuff doesn't get done. It's really bad here in Vermont. It's one of the big reasons why no new housing ever gets built, because a developer comes along with a plan to build housing, even if it's like low income housing, somebody has a problem with it, and all it takes is a couple people or even one person who has a problem with it, and they can just hamstring the whole thing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it's like a cost benefit analysis, right? It's, oh, hey, it might block your sunlight. It makes housing affordable and people can have more families, and it creates more jobs for the economy. Yeah, it's a big problem. Actually, funny on NIMBYs, I'm going to get something delivered by drone soon. My wife's friend lives quite near, but the drone delivery service does not work in our area. So I said, oh, hey, I'm going to come up to your house and I'm going to do the drone and check it out and see what it's like. And she sent my wife a screenshot of the community group chat. Basically, the community group chat is trying to get the drones banned over their neighborhood because they're like loud or whatever. But I was just like, man, NIMBYs are strong. It's like a strong group. People hate anything being built beside them.
Yeah. Another executive order Trump made. What do you think of this TikTok executive order that basically saves it from being banned for 90 days, I think it was?
Man, I have. Hold on. I just want to mention one more thing before we move on. For investors out there, one of the key participants in the project Stargate was Massa, who is the CEO of SoftBank. And I think the AI boom has long legs, has at least another 2 or 3 years left. But I will note that once this guy turns up, the shot clock on how long a financial trend can keep going, it usually starts ticking down. So in the 90s dot-com bubble, he came in and he gave tons of money to Yahoo, and then of course we know how that ended. And then in 2017 he came in and he was handing out billions of dollars to Uber and DoorDash and all these money losing delivery startups, and again that kind of culminated in the 2021 blow off. Just be cautious. But as regards TikTok, I'm so torn on this. I'm so torn. What do you think?
I'm not torn. I think we should just ban it and get on with our lives. Okay. It's horrible for kids. It's horrible for mental health. It's horrible for national security. It's controlled by China, no matter what they say. Just get it out of there. We have plenty of other stuff to focus on. And it's not I'm pretty much a free speech absolutist. To me, it's not a free speech issue at all, because the speech on the platform is controlled by the Chinese government.
Yeah, so research from Pew Research and others has shown they basically suppress like content about Tiananmen Square or Taiwan freedom or the Hong Kong protests. I guess I have a good, the bad, and the ugly take on this. The good is that my wife uses TikTok. I've never used it. I don't have an account. And she comes across all these amazing videos of people doing cool things, whether it's recipes or travel guides of moving to new places or whatever. And I think TikTok does a great job of surfacing that long tail of content, unlike Instagram or Twitter, actually. The bad is just what you said. It's the dead eye. We all know the dead eye scroll, when people just waste hours and hours scrolling endlessly through TikTok. They are weapons grade distractions. They are ruining people's attention spans. And I guess the ugly is, the reason why this was originally banned was that I think it was a dozen or so states banned it together, and the attorney generals in those states, they did a study into TikTok. They interviewed former employees, so on and so forth. And basically found, not only is it giving like depressing kids and increasing anxiety, but it's normalizing all this kind of minor physical abuse and all these bad things that kids could not see. But I'm still like, should we ban it? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess you could say a lot of those downsides about any social media site.
This is it.
The difference with TikTok is China, right? China doesn't allow Twitter in China. China doesn't even allow TikTok in China. They've got a different version of it for their citizens. And I've heard it shows like wholesome content, like kids doing engineering or math or wholesome stuff, unlike what you see on TikTok around here. I don't use TikTok, so maybe I'm just a grouchy boomer, but we got bigger things to worry about. Just get the Chinese app out of the country and then move on.
Totally. I think I'm still on the fence about just government banning it, but I would say the big change has to come from the ground up. I always feel like these things don't stick, and people will find a way to access it regardless what, unless parents band together and there's this social revolt against letting your kids on this. It's not only kids, of course, but I think the big thing is letting the kids on this.
If it could be bought by a United States company, controlled by a United States company, then I mean, it's just like any other social media app, arguably more addictive than any other one. But if that could happen, then I'd be fine with it continuing to exist.
Yeah, I mean, they just really did figure out the algorithm, right? It's just like, I think it was 130 million Americans use it. It really did, for a while, usurp Facebook and Instagram as like the number one app.
Are there any other executive orders we should discuss?
The other executive order that caught my attention was Trump rolling back Joe Biden's executive order on AI regulation. So this was a huge one. Basically, what the Biden executive order, it essentially required developers of AI systems that pose risks to US national security, the economy, to do safety tests on the AIs before they release them, to register with them register them with the US government, to fall in line on a number of laws. Basically, that slowed down innovation, and it was really bad. Trump rolled that back. I think he's trying to turn America into an AI superpower. Definitely support this, especially in the early stages, because we know even in the past 2 years, AI in November 2022 looks nothing like AI today. And all these silly rules and caps on how big the models can be, that just would have slowed down innovation. And I'll frame it like this. Why should we not use AI to develop life-saving drugs just because the US government wants model weights to be, or models to be a certain size or whatever? It was just so silly.
Yeah, you have to let new innovations flourish because you don't know where it's going to go. So you put even well-meaning regulations on a new industry early, and it cuts off possibilities that you might never even know could have happened because you cut them off early. And we know what happened behind closed doors in the government meetings that when Biden was still president, because Mark Andreessen talked about it. He said he attended meetings and the government was like, don't even bother investing in AI startups. It's going to be controlled by a couple of large companies in partnership with the US government, and that's it. And that would have been a horrible outcome for a lot of reasons. Probably the biggest one is it would have suppressed innovation and eventually put us behind China. Not to make the whole podcast about China, but that's a big deal.
Suppressed innovation, increased censorship. So if you think, like I do, that Andreessen basically said this, that AI is going to be part of your whole life, okay? If you can censor that AI, that's a really big deal. And again, yeah, it does lead to a social credit system, China-like world where, oh, you can't buy a train ticket or a plane ticket because you did something the government didn't approve of. So that's really scary. My favorite story on unintended consequences or whatever is that I think it was in the early 2000s, the US government put export restrictions on basically computing chips over a certain amount. And essentially the PlayStation 2, because it came out and it had a new chip in it, it was classed as, it was basically export restricted. It was like a weapons grade technology because it exceeded that threshold. So again, when you pass the laws, you don't foresee these things and then technology just keeps getting better and better. So yeah, we have 4 years to let AI breathe.
If you bring all this together, it is the most positive thing about the first couple of days of Trump's term is that successful business leaders are interested in working closely with the government and like getting involved in this stuff. And that's a huge, huge change from the prior administration. You saw the inauguration, I'm sure, like Bezos, Musk, Nadella, all of them, Zuckerberg, they were all there.
What amazing change since 2016, as you said, and I just thought it was so iconic that the inauguration was happening the same time as Davos, and basically anyone was in Washington, not Davos. So I think it's a huge change, and yeah, the other big takeaway is we're trying to let the innovators flourish and do their thing. Like Andreessen said in another podcast, people ask him, what do you want out of getting involved with the government? He says, I don't want anything. I want there to be less things. That's what we want too. We just want to be, the innovators want to be left alone to do their thing.
Yes, leave us alone, please.
So I guess still on the topic of AI, new study from the World Bank. We've been talking about the power of AI in education and the potential for basically AI to create personalized tutors, turn our kids into straight A students. I guess the question is, what will education look like when every student has a genius level tutor in their pocket? I guess we're about to find out.
So the punchline of this study is the World Bank studied a couple thousand students in Nigeria who had access to AI after school tutoring, and they found that they were able to get about 2 years worth of standard learning done in 6 weeks.
Amazing.
Right?
Incredible.
It shows that teaching is a manpower problem, right? Like if we had an individual teacher for every individual student everywhere in the world, almost every student would flourish. It's just not possible. AI comes pretty close to that. It mimics that. And I mean, this is the greatest thing that ever happened to third world countries and even like places in America where the education isn't that good. Like you saw the stat floating around that some large percentage of people in Philadelphia are functionally illiterate. There's no reason for that to be the case in anywhere on Earth, but definitely in America. And AI, we now have the tool to make sure that doesn't happen anymore.
I completely agree with you. In some ways, AI will be the separator. Like you need to learn to use this technology to get ahead. In other ways, I think of it as the great equalizer. Within this study, it said the program was particularly effective for girls and lower performing students, helping close the achievement gap. I've seen multiple studies across, whether it's education or Boston Consulting Group also did a study that found basically the lower level workers or students or people that are not as proficient, they benefit even more from AI. It helps them close the gap with the high achievers. And the amazing thing about this is we've known that personalized tutoring is the surest way to turn your kids into straight A students for 40 years. Back in 1984, Benjamin Bloom at MIT does a study. He basically splits the class into three. The students that are tutored individually, they go from 50th percentile average to 80 or 98th percentile exceptional, outperform all the students in the class. The problem, of course, is that it's not economical, it's not feasible to give each kid an individual tutor. And now we have that with AI. So those kids in Philadelphia or wherever, they basically have access to a world-class teacher on demand 24/7 now in every single subject.
It makes perfect sense that this would benefit the low achievers a lot more. I mean, on the one hand, the high achievers are probably adaptable. So if the teacher teaches in a style that is not ideal for them, they figure it out on their own. Or if they have a crappy teacher, they can talk to their parents and get a private tutor. They just have a lot of other options. Whereas a low achiever, someone with not a lot of resources, you have a crappy teacher, you're not going to learn how to read.
It's incredible. It's incredible. So such a good thing. There obviously is, you have GPT-4 and all these tools, but then there's wrappers on top of that. You have CanMigo from Khan Academy. They're now partnering with 266 schools across America, including 20,000 kids in Indiana, basically as an AI personalized tutor. Just amazing stuff. My daughter always asks me, like, how is this made or how does that work? And the other day she asked, how do airplanes fly? So I always fumble around for an answer and I never really know how to explain it from first principles. So I went to Claude, and Claude is my favorite AI tool. I not only got it to explain how airplanes fly simply, I got it to create an interactive visual game showing her how airplanes fly. It's obviously to do with the wings and the air below and the air above. And I just thought to myself, this is incredible. Just like that, you have this game that you can interact with to learn.
Yeah, I hope this gets embraced by teachers and teachers unions. You could easily see it going the other way, where it's like the way truck drivers feel about self-driving cars, like it's a threat to their profession. But really, it should create super teachers. Teachers should be required to learn how to use AI so they can, instead of helping a small number of students in their classroom, help all the students in their classroom.
I don't disagree with you. I think there's going to be pushback from unions. You know what unions are like. Although I would say in all my research on this, I find teachers are actually adopting it faster than students. I think that's the big difference here. So first of all, teachers and students are doing it on their own. It's not like tech, let's use iPads for these educational games. That's pushed on kids and teachers. This, they're going out and adopting it themselves. And the reason is that you'll meet teachers and they'll say, oh my God, I spent 80% of my time grading papers or doing this task and not getting to actually help the kids. Now you can just offload a big chunk of that to GPT and you can spend your time one-on-one with the kids or whatever, more one-on-one time. I think there's going to be some of the union pushback, but I also think whatever charter schools or whatever, this is going to be the go-to, the thing they're going to do.
All right. You got a dose of optimism for us today?
Two doses of optimism for you. So first of all, Javier Milei, the pro-free market president, comes in, takes power, and I believe in late 2023. You can see in this chart right now, monthly inflation since he came in dropped from 25% per month to around 2.4%. So just an incredible progress there. And I think it just proves the power of free markets and scaling back regulation and bureaucracy. Amazing. The second one is a chart of the annual working hours per worker in the United States, Australia, United Kingdom, and a couple of other countries. I remember Steven Pinker telling me a quote that was, the best explanation for the good old days is a bad memory. And I think people think, there's so many things that are bad about living today and the world's going to hell. But you can see, in fact, we're working less, we're having more free time than ever, and yet we're richer than ever. And I just think it's a nice way to zoom out and say, what a time to be alive.
Yeah, that shows no signs of slowing down either. And if we embrace AI, it should accelerate.
We'd be putting our feet up on the desks and the AI would be recording the podcast for us.
All right, viewers, you can boost our optimism by hitting the subscribe button, ringing that bell, and leaving us a comment. This greatly helps our channel grow. We appreciate all of your support, and we'll see you next week.